Okay, let's get started. First of all, my name is Jim McCloskey, and today is the first day of Colorado contracts. First day of Colorado contracts. And let's go into your manual. This is the manual you're going to be using. And let's go in and start with page 1-1. Start at the beginning of the beginning here. And as we go through this, I'm going to be saying things like put a star by that, put a check mark by that. And when I say that, what that means is that you're going to have a question on that either here in class or on the state exam or both. So that is the purpose of me saying put a check by something. And right off the bat on page 1-1, everybody there? Does anybody have a red manual? No? Okay, good. Okay, look at the very top of the page, 1-1, put a star by it right off the bat. The Colorado Real Estate Broker License Law was passed to protect the people of the state of Colorado. The purpose of license law is to protect the public. Put that in there. To protect the public. That's how it's asked on the state exam. The purpose of licensing law. That's to license doctors, to license attorneys, any type of licensing is for one purpose, to protect the public, to protect the people of Colorado. Now, what the law does not cover, after that put ethics. Ethics. The Real Estate Commission does not regulate ethics. Now, how do we learn about ethics? You learn about it by joining one of the local realtor boards. And there's 7 of them, 6 here in town plus Boulder, and you will join one of those more than likely after you get licensed. And when you join one of them, you have access to all of them. Approximately 6 million people by just joining one of those boards. Is anybody going to be working up in Boulder? Several of you. Good. I'll have to tease people from Boulder. That's great. And what happens in Boulder is that halfway through Boulder, there's a split between the MetroList system in Denver and IRIS. I almost said ISIS. You know, IRIS and IRIS. So when you work in Boulder, you have to join both of those. I know you're shocked that Boulder has something different going on, but that's okay. But that's okay. Check with your broker that you're going to be going to work for, and they might have some special program where you might just have to join one of those. But anyway, you will join one of the local boards more than likely, and what you do, you will then become a realtor. It's a 2-syllable word. It's not realtor, okay? 2 syllables, realtor. So from now on, whenever you hear somebody say realtor, it's going to be like scratching on a chalkboard. So make sure you pronounce it correctly. Where's my other marker? Is it around there somewhere? Thank you. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, you join one of these boards. My main board I've always belonged to is the Jefferson County Board over here on 10th and Wadsworth. But at one time I belonged to 27 boards. I had the largest appraisal company in Colorado, and I've had boards all the way from Wyoming to New Mexico and everything in between. Which here you'll only be working in the Metro Denver area, which includes Boulder. It's probably where you're going to be setting up shop. And so you'll just have to join one of those boards, and then you have access to all, essentially 6 million people, which is what the population is now. We're going to be talking about this, what's happening in Colorado right now. At this point, there's 15,000 people a month moving into Colorado, 10,000 moving into the Denver area. So, what a time to be getting into real estate. Because out of these 10,000 people moving into Denver, you figure 3 people per family. That's 3,500, give or take, dwellings that have to be built every month to accommodate these people. And somebody's got to work with them, either on the rental side or on the sales side. Your timing to get in this business is incredible. Wow. Your biggest problem is going to be writer's cramp. It really will be. And trying to find time to sleep. Because you're going to be rocking. You're going to be moving. That's a good problem to have. But anyway, what happens is when you join one of these boards, you have access to all these people. I was in San Francisco for a while back in the late 80s. And what happened when I moved back there, I thought I died and woke up in the dark ages. I don't know what it's like now, but back then it was terrible, just terrible. We're so spoiled here. The job that we get from the Metro List, from the Real Estate Commission, we have all these people that are just backing us up, looking out for us, for ourselves, looking out for us as we're going through our industry. But I got to San Francisco, and there was one county outside of San Francisco called Contra Costa County, and they had 7 boards just in that one county, 7 realtor boards, and you had to belong to all of them to have access to any of them, and it was $450 for each one.
Wow.
And then the information you got was terrible, and then you couldn't. I couldn't wait to get back here, and I was there actually when the earthquake hit during the World Series. I think it was 1989, and that market died after that. It was just a while after that I came back here again. So anyway, give you a little bit of background. And San Francisco is, again, you think that would be state of the art and everything. No, Denver's state of the art. We are so spoiled. We have our own contracts that all we do is fill in the blanks. They're massive. Our sales contract is 17 pages. Actually, the one we're going to fill out here is 16 pages, but it could be 17 when you add some additions to it. Our listing contract is 8 pages. I was talking to a lady from Missouri yesterday. She's coming here to get licensed, and she said she wanted to take a contracts class. I said, boy, you sure do. I said, our contract here is 17 pages. She said, boy, our sales contract in Missouri is like 6 pages. I said, our listing contract is 8 pages. She said, ours is 3. So, yeah. So, they're massive contracts, but all we're doing is filling in the blanks. They're sitting there right in front of us. And like I say, we're going to go over both those contracts, the listing contract and the sales contract, virtually line by line over the next few days. So, anyway, so this ethics issue is covered by the realtor boards when you go to work for one of them. And, like I said, I was in San Francisco. I'll tell you what, I was born and raised here. I'm a native. And I couldn't stand waking up in the morning and not looking at those mountains. Boy, did I miss them. Not only that, but I would have given $20 for a decent burrito.
I have a question. So the realtor boards, do they enforce ethical standards as well?
Do they enforce ethical standards? Mike, they do. The realtor boards actually can go up to a $5,000 fine.
Okay.
The Real Estate Commission can only go up to $2,500 fine. Now, don't get paranoid. Don't get paranoid at all. But those are the limits on the fines they can have against real estate brokers. Against appraisers, just to give you an example, the highest fine, that doesn't apply to appraisers. The highest fine I've seen against an appraiser from the Division of Real Estate, $64,000. Several of them $40-some thousand. So there's no limit when it comes to appraisers. Type thing. That's why, one of the reasons why we're going to get to appraisal in this course. Within 5 years, there will be no more appraisers. And if you want to talk to me about that in private, I'll be glad to. But essentially, you can't work on your own anymore. You have to belong to a marketing company to be an appraiser, and they get a cut out of every deal you do. And you can actually be criminally prosecuted if you bring in an appraisal too low or too high, in someone else's opinion. Isn't that something? There won't be any more appraisers soon. I don't know what we're going to do. Use county records. That'll work half the time. The other half we're going to be in a heck of a mess. So anyway, that's what's coming to us in the marketplace. We'll work that out when it happens. So far we have appraisers, and most of the good ones are gone, but there's plenty out there to make the deals happen. So now, and do they regulate ethics? What they do, before you join with one of the local boards, they have a class that you go to. And they go over ethics and what they expect from you and all this stuff. They also go over how you use the MLS system. And then you can become a member of the board. I think you have to take that class every 3 years. I think I took mine a couple years ago. But every 3 or 4 years it might be, you have to retake the ethics class. So yeah, they do regulate ethics from the realtor boards. Again, the Real Estate Commission does not regulate ethics. Guaranteed question on the state exam, right there. does not regulate ethics. Now, look at the second last paragraph on page 1-1. The Division of Real Estate is part of the Department of Regulatory Agencies. That's called DORA, D-O-R-A, the Department of Regulatory Agencies. You see their commercials on TV, hear them on the radio. Flip over to page 1-3, 1-3, and see where it says Enforcement section toward the bottom of the page there. Look at that website right above it. That is the website for the Real Estate Commission right there. Mark that, guys. You remember it's on page 3, 1-3, right at the beginning of the book. Everybody see that? Right above the enforcement section where it says that. And make sure you remember that. And that website is exceptional. It used to be terrible. And they hired about 10 years ago a guy by the name of Sean Ryan is his name. And this guy got that website where it's just rocking. And I shouldn't tell you guys this, but when you call up the Real Estate Commission to get an answer on anything, ask for Sean Ryan. Right there, I write his name down, S-E-A-N-R-H-Y-N-E, Sean Ryan. Don't tell him I told you to call him. Okay, and another one down there who's exceptional is Eric Turner. Eric Turner. They're the two guys who are pretty much in charge of licensing down there. And I'll tell you what, I've sent both these guys emails at 7 in the morning and got responses by 7:30 many times. That's how on the ball these guys are. So if you have an issue, give them a call and ask for them specifically. Look back on page 1-2, if you will. Right in the middle of the page it talks about the master file. When we get licensed, the Real Estate Commission will have a master file on every one of us. They have to know how to get a hold of us. And they will have this master file. Now, look on page 1-3 again, and look at that enforcement section. And look at that paragraph right underneath it. 1-3, C, toward the bottom of the page, second to last paragraph. The Real Estate Commission has the power upon its own motion to investigate any licensee's real estate activity. If a written complaint is filed, the office is compelled to investigate. Now, what happens is they audit about 3% of the brokers every year. And what they do is they mainly audit the employing brokers. They're going to be talking about how we're one single licensing state in Colorado, and you'll be working for an employing broker. And that's the ones that they're looking for because they're the ones who have the escrow deposits, the security deposits, the earnest money deposits, etc. And they will go and audit them to make sure everything's cool. But if a written complaint comes in, then we answer it. They answer, then the people who complain answer our answer, we answer their answer again, then the Real Estate Commission will decide what to do. And more times than not, they just let it go. Or what they may do, look at the last sentence on this page. The Commission can also issue letters of admonishment. Underneath admonishment, put admonition. 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 And they love that question on the state exam. That's the slap on the wrist. That's the lowest form of disciplinary action they can have. It's a letter of admonishment or admonition. And one thing about this industry, guys, you can go your whole career and never have a complaint. And if you do get a complaint, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It means you upset somebody, and then the Real Estate Commission says, let's figure this out. Was the public harmed by what you did? And again, we have many, many people watching our backs in this business. You're going to meet so many people in this industry. When you write a deal, there are literally dozens of people out there that you never even meet that are working on that deal. There's title people, there's lenders, there's inspectors, there's surveyors, there's the other broker that you're working with who's bringing in the buyer on your listing, or you're bringing in the buyer on their listing. And all these people were watching each other's backs to make sure everything goes smooth. It's very rare for a real estate broker to ever get sued because we are not a party to the contract. I love it. We're part of the transaction, but we're not a party to the contract. And we'll talk about that once we get to the contract. And usually, if there's an issue from the Real Estate Commission, it's usually property managers. mainly because they're working with many different escrow accounts. And an escrow account is simply OPM, other people's money. You know, when you're dealing with other people's money, the real estate commission wants to know what the heck you're doing, needless to say. But don't get paranoid. Don't get paranoid. Let's continue here with that with last paragraph in 1-3, that last paragraph. If a complaint against the licensee is of such serious nature that it results in disciplinary action against the licensee, a hearing will be held before, I like that, administrative law judge. If it goes that far, it'll go before an administrative law judge. If it goes that far, very, very rarely does it go that far. Because you guys work it out and whatever happens, happens. But I'm just telling you this, that we are a professional once we become a real estate broker. We're a profession. And there are certain standards we have to abide by. And that's what this class is all about. We're going to find out in this class that Colorado is one of the very few states that define what we're doing when we're selling real estate as the legal practice of law. We're one of the very few states where we are considered to be practicing law when we're practicing real estate. Because of that, we don't have to have our contracts reviewed by attorneys. We don't have to have attorneys at our closings. And we don't want them there. We can help it. And so again, we are actually practicing law legally. Now the trade-off to that is we have 168 hours. The second most of any state. Only Texas has more hours than Colorado does. And Colorado has the toughest exam in the nation to get your real estate broker's license. We have two sayings in this course. Number one is one and done. You're going to take that state exam one time and you're done. It's not I'm going to take it, I hope I pass it. If that's your attitude, I'm not going to let you go down and take it. I want you to say, are you kidding me? I'm ready. Hold me back if you can, but you can't. I'm getting down there and take that baby. You've got to be 100% sure you're going to pass it. One and done. The purpose of licensing, the purpose of all this, the real estate exam and everything, is not to help you get into real estate, it's to keep you out of real estate. That's what licensing laws are for. That's what the testing is for, to keep you out. Our second saying is similar to the first. Don't let the bastards win. I'm on the committee that makes up the questions for the state exam, so I guess I'm one of the bastards. But as you're sitting there studying, you're going to go, man, that's a tough question. Those, yeah, you're right. Believe me, you're going to say that word a few times. That's okay. Don't let them win, guys. For the next 4.5 weeks, that's how long this course is, this is your life. This is your life. If you're sitting there driving the car and you reach over and turn on the radio, you just flunked the state exam. When you're driving, talk to yourself. What are the different types of contracts? How do we take title? What's the difference between a deed of trust and a deed? Blah, blah, blah. You're just talking to yourself as you're driving. You wake up at 2 in the morning, you reach over and turn on the TV, you just flunked the state exam. Reach over and open up your 3-ring binder, if you will. The big 3-ring binder you have. And in the inside flap of both the front and the back, you should have what's called national questions and Colorado questions. These are cool. These are just true-false questions. We don't go over them in class, but they're a very quick study. Just make sure you have them right inside your front cover. Did you not get any, Daniel?
Check the back of the binder.
Check in the back there, yeah. If you didn't get any, I will get some for you right now. Everybody cool? Yes, sir, that's it, yeah. And those are great. Like I say, when you wake up in the morning, whatever, or you just want to do, quick, you only have 30 minutes to hit something, get those true-false questions out. You'll love them. All the answers are right there. Like I say, we don't go over them in class. That's just extra study material for you. Now, let's go over to page 1-4 and look at the license law. What's going to happen when you get your real estate license? You're going to be going to work for a broker, an employing broker, and they're probably going to give you all of the stationery you need, and they're going to give you your business cards, more than likely. Do not join your local board of realtors until you decide which broker you're going to be going with, because they might have special deals because of the size of the company or something else. So don't join the board until you go decide which broker you're going to be going to work for. And should you start interviewing now? Sure, you bet. Go in and talk to them and see what they have to say. But don't get obsessed with who to go to work for. Get obsessed with passing that test. If you don't pass that test, it's academic who you're going to go to work for, right? So first thing first, pass that test. But do go and take some interviews with some other brokers, you bet. Once you get your broker's license, you will be in high demand. And when you go interview, you're interviewing them. They're interviewing you too. But believe me, you are interviewing them because you're going to have your choice of who to go to work for to a great extent. So keep that in mind. And like I say, they're going to give you probably your own business cards. Now, this is important. If you're ugly, don't put your picture on your business card. And you know who you are. Okay, so let's go to the top of page 1-5. 1-5. And when do we have to be licensed? When we're selling, exchanging, buying, renting, or leasing real estate. When we're offering to sell, exchange, buy, rent, or lease real estate. When we're selling or offering to sell or exchange an existing lease of real estate. When we're, and this word is important, negotiating. We're going to be finding out about unlicensed assistants. And in our business, we're one of the few states where we can have an unlicensed assistant helping us. Maybe putting the lock boxes on the house, putting the signs up, running the paperwork around town, sit at an open house. Yeah, they can sit at an open house for us. We'll talk about that too, how to handle open houses. And all of these issues here, but they cannot do two things. They cannot negotiate a deal, and they can't fill out contracts. So remember that word negotiate. They cannot negotiate.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So if you do not have a real estate license, can you actually show a property?
If you don't have a real estate license, can you show a property? With that seller's permission, yes. If you are an unlicensed assistant, but you have to have that seller's permission.
So if it is a rental property?
If it's a rental property, yes, they can't go in there by themselves. You have to be with them. That's what it's. What do you think of
Well,
I know you're property managers.
Well, I work for a single home property management.
Uh-huh.
So we were only licensed people were allowed to show the property.
Exactly. You can show it. An unlicensed. Did you hear that? In her company, she's a property manager, and only licensed people can show those properties that are being leased. And no, an unlicensed assistant can show them also, but you need the seller's, the owner's, not seller, but the owner's permission. And if I got the owner's permission, you can send them around to show properties. You bet.
But what they can't do, and they often do as a leasing agent, is discuss rents and things like that. And technically, they're not supposed to touch that
Very
stuff.
good. I hope you picked that up.
Yeah,
what
we're
Mark
not,
just
we
said.
don't execute, we don't negotiate, we don't do any of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And like Mike just said, they have a tendency to negotiate. You know, what is the rent? Well, it's this much if you want a 1-bedroom, this much if you want a 2-bedroom, blah, blah, blah. Can you do that? No, but you can pass out brochures, pass out flyers that the broker filled out. And they can actually sit open houses too. You bet.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, if you're so busy that you need an assistant and you don't get one, you become your own assistant. So it's kind of nice that we can have unlicensed assistants under us. We're one of the few states that will allow that. So something to consider. So moving right along here. The next one, listing, offering, attempting, or agreeing to list real estate. Auctioning, or offering, attempting, or agreeing to auction real estate. So you go to this place and there's an auctioneer up there and he's that fast-talking dude and he's auctioning off real estate. Does he have to be licensed? Yes, he does. Unless there's someone in the crowd who's licensed. Then the person in the crowd can fill out contracts. But I'm just telling you that, and it's confusing. I hope you'll remember this. A tricky question on the state exam says, which of the following does not have to be licensed? Or which of the following does have to be licensed? And one of the answers, of course, is auctioneer, whatever. Yes, auctioneers do have to be licensed, unless they give that caveat in there. Unless there's someone in the crowd who can fill out the contracts. If they don't have that in the question, auctioneers do have to be licensed. Boy, remember that. And we're going to hit you with that question three times. You'll be ready. You'll be okay. Number 7 here, buying, selling, offering to buyer, seller, otherwise dealing in options in real estate. We really don't use options much anymore. Like a rent with option. I'll rent your property for the next year at such and such, and they'll give me, and I'll buy it for $200,000 if I decide I want it. A rent with option, we just don't see them anymore. The typical home these days, guys, is on the market for hours, not even days or weeks. I'll tell you, well, you know what most brokers are doing right now? They're listing the property on Friday, and you don't have to put it in the MLS till Monday. And they're holding open houses on Saturday and selling it themselves, so they get both ends of the deal. Be careful doing that. Be careful doing that. You want to make sure you expose your home to the market as much as you possibly can. But this market, nobody's ever seen a market like this in Denver. It's totally insane out there. Typically, we're writing anywhere from 7 to 12 contracts on a typical buyer before we find them a home. Because you just never offer what the people offer, what the asking price is. You're always jumping above it because there's such a lack of inventory right now. That's a good problem to have, and it's a bad problem to have. Either way you want to look at it. So, anyway, like I say, you're going to get writer's cramp out there. That's the biggest problem with this business right now, and that's a good problem to have. You can live with that anytime. We'll talk more and more about that too. And number 8, performing any of the foregoing acts as an employee of or on in behalf of an owner of real estate or interest therein. And negotiating, again, or attempting to offering to negotiate the listing sale. Number 10, soliciting a fee or valuable consideration from a prospective tenant for furnishing information concerning the availability of real estate. Now, there's an exception to that. Like the apartment finders that you go to, they're usually a bunch of young kids, usually, and they're working actually for the owners of the buildings. And it's a free service. If they charge, they have to be licensed. So it's a free service, like I see the apartment finders. I guess I see their building downtown or over on Evans, wherever it is. So they're still around, I believe. But I'm just using that as an example. There's some exceptions to this. Now, how about new homes? How about, well, let's back up. How about when you're selling your own house? Do you have to be licensed? Of course not, if you're selling your own house. And either do developers. Aren't they just selling their own home? Developers do not have to be licensed. And neither do the people who work for them. They don't have to be licensed. Now, most builders will require you to be licensed, and then they'll have you put your license on inactive status, so you're not competing with them. And working on site is a part of this industry that some of you should consider going to work for. Again, I worked in the early 80s. I worked for several years for builders. And it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, again, you know, you're working like crazy when you go to work for them because of all the action that you're getting. And it's a wonderful way to go. The only problem, well, there's several problems with working on site. One of the worst ones is a lot of times you can sell yourself out of a job. You sell out the subdivision and you don't have another one to put you in. That can happen. But anyway, you might want to consider going to work for a new home builder. And most of them require you to be licensed. But again, they put your license on inactive status, so you're not competing with them.
Going back to the owners selling their own homes, when they obviously are able to complete the transaction, can they actually write the contract?
Can a seller selling their own home write the contract? Sure, you bet they can.
So what is it that they cannot do?
What can they not do? If you're the seller of the home, whether you're licensed or not, you can't commit fraud.
Okay.
You can't misrepresent the property. You have to disclose all known material defects in that property,
Okay.
even when it's your own property. And what happens is most people who are selling their own home have no clue that there's a contract that they're supposed to use, that we use, and they have no clue where that contract is. They have no clue about title insurance. They have no clue how to set up closings. They need us. They need us desperately. And they're sitting there saying, well, shoot, I'll just put my home on the market. They're selling so quick, I'll save all this money. Usually you don't. Usually you end up selling that home for less than you could if you didn't have a broker, more times than not. Because you don't price your home correctly. Okay, let's keep going here. Look at the real estate broker and B down here. An attorney in fact, acting without compensation under a power of attorney. A power of attorney. Somebody calls you up and says, I've got the closing on Tuesday. The buyer or seller calls up and says, we got to change it. My cousin died and I got to go to the funeral. In this business, guys, you move heaven and earth not to change a closing date. That's when deals fall apart many times. So what you do is you try to get around that and say, listen, do you have a friend or a relative who could come in and sign for you under a power of attorney? And so what happens is there's this form that's an approved form by the Real Estate Commission for a power of attorney. And so they will go ahead and fill out that form. You can help them do it. And then someone else can come in and sign the papers for them. Now this power of attorney creates an attorney in fact. Not an attorney at law, but an attorney in fact. A very limited power to sign for these people. We're going to talk about that many times in this course, and there's several questions about that too. Power of attorneys create an attorney in fact. Look at this number 2 here. Any public official. If you're an elected official, you don't have to be licensed. It's kind of odd, like to be an assessor, you don't have to be licensed as an appraiser. If you're the head of the assessor, because you're an elected official, but every assessor has to be licensed. Isn't that something? Like in Jefferson County, the assessor is not a licensed appraiser, he's a registered appraiser, but everybody underneath him has to be either a registered or licensed appraiser, but he doesn't because he's an elected official. Kind of different. Interesting anyway. And then we have this, any receiver, trustee, administrator, conservator, executor, guardian. Let's talk about these. First of all, a receiver is someone who takes a property out of a probate action. Every will goes through what's called probate court. Probate court, we'll talk about this many, many times. Every will is probated, every property is individually probated. And what happens is the court, if someone dies without a will, that's called intestate. Without a will, intestate. We're going to talk about that many times. Intestate, they die without a will. The court will appoint a receiver to take that property out of that probate action. Look about two words over, an administrator. The court will appoint an administrator to carry out whatever they came up with. An administrator and a receiver could be the same person. A receiver and an administrator. So let's run through it here. We're going to talk about this many more times. Someone dies intestate, but they have relatives. How will their estate be settled? It'll be settled through that state's laws of descent and distribution by means of probate. One more time. Someone dies intestate. Intestate. You need a pencil? Daniel? Oh, you got one there. Cool. Okay. So when someone dies intestate without a will, and they have relatives, the state will say, now wait a minute, so the lady had a husband, 8 kids, and a sister. That's probably who she would have left everything to. So they will determine the descent and how it's going to be distributed. The laws of descent and distribution by means of probate, through the probate court. Another word for the probate court is the surrogate court. Like a surrogate mother, someone who steps in and takes the place of the mother. The probate court is the same as that. It takes the place of the dead guy. So again, someone dies intestate, but they do have heirs. Their estate will be settled through that state's laws of descent and distribution by means of probate, and the court will then appoint an administrator to carry out its provisions.
And is it the same as the receiver?
It could be. The receiver is one who's
I mean,
appointed.
it could be the same person, but is it the same function?
Is it the same function as a receiver, an administrator and a receiver? An administrator is beyond just a receiver. The court may appoint just a receiver to take the money, to take the property out of a probate action, but there might be an administrator that's going to take care of what the court came up with. So they could be two different people, or it could be the same person.
Okay.
It all depends.
It all depends on what the court.
What the court decides, yeah. And
Why would the court decide to have two different people in this case?
why would they decide to have two different people? Mainly because maybe it's a big estate. And there's quite a bit of property coming out of this estate. Not only that, but every property is individually probated. I have a home in Golden, and I die, that'll be probated in Golden. And if I have a home in Thornton, it'll be probated in Thornton. Two completely different actions. What if I have 20 homes all over the place? Or more? What if I have 100 homes? I met a guy last week who says he owns over 100 rental properties. Pretty crazy. I mean, that's, boy.
That would drive him. Yeah.
No man, yeah. He's 20 years old and has a bunch of gray hair. Not really. Yeah, yeah. And so when something like that happens, they're going to be receivers all over the place, plus an administrator more than likely. And they, of course, in these cases, do not have to be licensed, even though they are transferring properties. And then in between the two, there's a trustee. Let's say I did this. I put this property in trust for my granddaughter. And then I appointed my sister to be the trustee, so when my granddaughter turns 21, she can transfer the property to my daughter. So there's a trustee and there's three parties. I am the trustor. I set it up. My granddaughter is the beneficiary. She's going to end up with this property. I'm putting in trust for her. And my daughter is the trustee. One more time. I'm the trustor. I set up the trust. My granddaughter is the beneficiary, who's going to end up with this property. And then my daughter is the trustee. Now, for the state exam, my daughter does not have to be licensed. The trustee does not have to be licensed, even though she's transferring property. So just to confuse us, since we redid the questions since we made up the questions on the state exam, trustees now do have to be licensed. But on the state exam, that question has not been updated. So trustees don't have to be licensed on the state exam. On the state exam, there's going to be between 8 and 12 questions that are wrong. Some of them really wrong. Some of them just a little wrong. This one's just a little wrong. Okay? Now I'm going to point them all out to you as we're going through this whole course. So one more time. The trustee does not have to be licensed for the state exam. In real life, they do.
When did that change?
Oh, about 2 years ago.
And they haven't changed it.
We haven't changed on the exam yet. We haven't worked on those questions for 4 years.
Okay.
Well, it's not changed here.
Huh?
It's not changed here.
Yeah, no, but they won't change it
Yeah.
probably until they do the change on the test. It's kind of
Oh,
a
yeah.
transition in the
Yeah.
same part.
And so then we have an administrator appointed by the court, and then we have a conservator. That's someone appointed by the court to help somebody who's incapacitated. I want to put that there. A conservator is someone who is appointed to help someone who's incapacitated. And they can handle their provisions and properties without having to be licensed.
And what is the qualification for
What is-
being incapacitated
What is the qualifications for being incapacitated?
in this case?
I have a, well, he's more of an acquaintance than a friend. And what happened is he got heavy into meth, and he cannot walk. He's got the brain of a 5-year-old. He can't walk or anything. And his brother volunteered to be the conservator.
So it can be physically or it could be mentally, that's what I'm trying.
Or both,
Or
physical
both.
or mental or both.
Okay, I just, okay.
Incapacitated, and the court could appoint a conservator to handle all of his stuff, and that conservator does not have to be licensed. Then an executor, that's someone mentioned in a will to carry out his provisions. An executor in a will. And a guardian is someone who is appointed by the court to help someone who's either very young or very old. A guardian.
So, for the conservator, age, it's not obviously somebody that is incapacitated.
As a conservator, that's to help someone who's incapacitated.
So
who
it
can't
has
help
nothing to do
themselves.
with somebody older that can't take care of themselves.
Older or young, it's a guardian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Do you have a question or a
No, I
story?
just,
Do you have
no,
a story for us?
no, I just wanna make
Okay.
sure I understand the difference.
Okay. Then, any person, firm, partnership, LLC, association. If I'm working for a corporation, I don't necessarily have to be licensed to go out and buy properties for that corporation, but there's a chance I do. It's not that. Let's talk about wills. Let's talk about doing a will. In a will, I will appoint an executor to carry out its provisions. And there's two types of wills. Write this down. It's not in the book. Write it down on the bottom, page 1-5, or wherever you want to. Two types of wills. The first type of will is a holographic will. HOLOGRAPHIC. Holographic will. Just like it's spelled just like it sounds. Holographic will. Now, a holographic will, you don't need any witnesses. You can do it in your own handwriting, or you can type it and just sign it. Holographic will. The other type of will is the non-cupative. Non-cupative. N-O-N-C-A-P. N-O-N-C-U-P-A-T-I-V-E. Non-cupative. Now that's right, you're on your deathbed, and you do need witnesses for that. Non-cupative and holographic are the two types of wills.
There's nothing in between?
Morning. Pardon me?
There's nothing in between?
No, those are the only two types of wills there are. Yeah. And again, we have a holographic and non-cupative. We're in our manual, guys, on page 1-3. And 1-5. Actually, we're jumping to 1-6 right now. So, anyway, so those are the two types. We're going to talk about that many times, different types of wills. Let's go over to page 1-7. And it talks about different types of properties, whatever. Let's talk about some things that are changing in our industry. First of all, we're seeing the end of things like shopping centers. Actually, retail is in trouble. The internet is where our
Taking
industry
over.
is going. And you see these companies reinventing themselves. They have to, because the industry is changing so much. Shopping centers, like here in Denver. Who's a native here? Anybody else? Few people. JCRS was the first shopping center in Denver, where Casa Bonita is. That was the first shop. We thought it was huge, monstrous shopping center. And then the second one they built was Lakeside Shopping Center, right over here on 44th and about Harlan. And when they built that, we thought we were big time in Denver. This big monstrous shopping center. And you know what they did? They had a sign out in front. There was a big red electrified sign, and it said Lakeside Shopping Center. People used to come from all over the state to drive by that sign. Talk about a one-horse town back then. I remember my folks used to take us over there to look at the sign, and then we go get an ice cream cone and go over to Lakeside and watch the train go around the lake. Isn't that something? Anyway, so Lakeside was just like huge shopping center, and then they put a roof on it. Boy, I tell you what, we were big time then. Big time town. Then they built Westland Shopping Center, and then they built Spacenet down south, Cinderella City. Biggest shopping center in the world at the time. So again, and now they're all gone. Westminster Mall, it's gone. You're seeing the industry reinvent itself, and it's got to, because everything is changing. Everything is changing. And that's what we've got to keep doing too. And in any corporation, you've got to keep reinventing yourself. For instance, right now, out of all the schools for real estate, there's 3 schools that have in-class studies. Only 3. Does that mean I'm a dinosaur or an innovator? I don't know. But I mean it is. Will there always be a demand for in-class studies? I think there will be. Until I'm the only one sitting here, I'm going to keep having in-class studies, but I've got to keep reinventing what I'm doing. So, anyway, just kind of interesting how things change. Now, let's talk about this number 16 down here, any person, firm, partnership, LLC, whatever. Really what they're talking about here, let's talk about communication lines, wireless communications, whatever. We have got so many issues going on. Remember, possession is 9 points of the law, which means 90% of all laws deal with possession. Possession not only of real estate, but personal property too. There are laws protecting me owning this marker. So again, we have possession laws that we are going to be, that's this whole course, really, is possession laws. Like for instance, what happens is the government has condemned all of the airspace 500 feet and higher above all of our properties for airplane traffic. We can't send a bill to United Airlines for flying over our house. They have a right to do that. 500 feet and higher above all of our houses is a right-of-way. There's an easement up there. So, again, and how did they do that? They did that, write this down, inverse condemnation. Inverse condemnation. We're going to talk about this many times. That's how the government takes over rights-of-ways. How the government takes over rights-of-ways is inverse condemnation. Inverse condemnation is also how we fight eminent domain, which we're going to be talking about. Eminent domain is how we fight eminent domain and how the government takes over rights-of-ways. All the telephone poles going down our streets and whatever, how'd the government do that? With inverse condemnation. Did they knock on your door and ask if they could put a pole down your street? No, they didn't. They didn't have to. They have a right to do that through what's called inverse condemnation. Let's look at the very last paragraph on page 1-7, where it says license required. Let's read this. It is unlawful for any person, firm, partnership, LLC. We'll talk about all these corporations, partnerships in great detail in this course. Or corporation to engage in a business or capacity of real estate broker in this state without first having obtained a license from the Real Estate Commission. No person shall be granted a license until such person establishes compliance with the provisions of this Part 1 concerning education, experience, and testing, truthfulness and honesty, and otherwise good moral character, and in addition to any other requirements of this section, competency to transact the business of a real estate broker in such manner as to, there it is again, safeguard the interests of the public, the purpose of our licensing. And only after satisfactory proof of such qualifications, together with the application for such license, is filed in the office of the commissioner of the commission in determining such person's character, real estate commission shall be governed, etc., etc. What's going to happen when you get through with this course is we're going to give you what's called an REC 33. And you cannot take that state exam until you get that REC 33 from us. What was happening is several years ago, some students, not only here but other schools too, were going down and taking the exam just to see how tough it is. And what is happening, of course, they flunked it, and we all get our, all of a sudden our passing rate goes down the tubes. I called up Sean Ryan one day. I said, Sean, it's not just us, but other schools are having this problem too, I'm sure, where students are going down there taking that exam without having the REC 33. He said, I had no idea this was happening. So anyway, I just kind of forgot about it. And about 2 months later, all of the schools got this memo from Sean Rye saying that if anybody goes down and takes that state exam without having received an REC 33, because on there you have to swear that you did get an REC 33. You have to state that you did get one. So you check that box. If you check that box and you don't have one, you will be permanently barred from ever being able to get a real estate license. I thought, man, it's kind of an overreaction to what I was talking about. But I mean, don't, because it speaks to character. So don't go down there and try to take that test. A student last week wanted to go take the test. Said, I'm taking it tomorrow. I need to get my REC 33. I said, you haven't taken your last two finals. She said, I don't care, I got to take it. I said, you're not taking it. I'm not giving you your REC 33. So I'm just going to take it anyway. I said, no, you won't. I said, you will be permanently barred from ever getting your license. I wasn't yelling, I was just telling her what the facts of life were. And she had to cancel that appointment. You can cancel it 2 days before you take your test and you get your money back. No, she had to just cough up $90. Sorry. You know, we talked in class about how important it is to make sure you do everything in order. We have a sheet that we have, and it's in your 3-ring binder about a checkoff that you have to turn in. If you don't have that during the break, please come and get one. Those of you on DVD, we will get one to you if you don't have it. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. Okay, let's keep going here, guys. We are on page 1-8, and it talks about fingerprints. Now, you're going to have to go down and get fingerprints, and they're going to run your fingerprints through the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and through the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And the way to do it, there's a couple ways. You can go over to the testing center, and that's PSI. They're right over here on 49th and Independence, 1.5 miles from the school here. You could walk down there in half an hour. But go over there and get them, and that's one way you can. Now, if you go down there, who's been down there recently? How much do they charge when you go down there?
Like 53, 56, I don't
Fif-
remember.
I was $56.50. I went yesterday.
$56.50, and that includes running it through the get
It's
your
everything.
fingerprints and everything.
Yeah.
And then $56.50. Then they run it and they shoot it down to the Real Estate Commission. They run it down to PSI. PSI shoots it down to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and then they will go ahead and do it and just throw it over to the Real Estate Commission. They will not tell you. They will not give you a copy of it. Nothing. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can do it if you want to save a few dollars is we have some cards that you can get. And we charge $2 for these cards. And you can go down to any local police station around your house. I suggest you go right down here to 29th and Wadsworth, right across from the cemetery. And you'll save maybe $10, $15 doing it that way. Then you run it down to 6th and Kipling. That's where the Colorado Bureau of Investigation is. So they're both just right down the street here if you want to do it that way. Yeah.
What's the name of the place at 49th and Independence?
PSI, and is the testing center. And if you, I have those on the spindle out there, guys. Look at that spindle out there every now and then. And this is where you're going to call up to get the test scheduled when you take your test also.
And that sheet says there's no suite number on it, but it is 220.
Yeah, sweet.
Okay.
There is a suite number. Yeah,
220.
220.
And also, you hear nothing back.
You will hear
news is
nothing
good.
back.
No news is good news.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, and no news is good news. If you have an issue that you're concerned about, please come see me. We'll go to my office in private. They're not concerned about DUIs or any misdemeanors. They're concerned about felonies in the last 10 years. But if you've had a felony in the last 10 years, it doesn't mean that you're going to be banned from getting your license. Don't freak. In the last 3 years, I've gotten 3 people approved. I haven't gotten them approved. I just sent them down to the Real Estate Commission. Actually sent them to Sean Ryan. And he showed them what to do because it has to go before the board. And they will either tell you can get your license or not. One lady got approved for her license, and she had a felony for fraud a year before and got her through for her license. So again, don't get paranoid about it. But you know, she did it right. She was smart. She took this course and passed the state exam, then went down and talked to him. And this exam, guys, I'll tell you what, it's a bugger. And they said, man, if you can pass the exam, you must have enough on the ball to be a broker. So they went ahead and got her through. Like I say, don't get paranoid if you're concerned. Please, just come see me and we'll talk. Let's go down to number 2 here on that page, 1-8. Every real estate broker licensed under this Part 1 shall maintain a place of business within the state. This has to do with your employing broker, not you. Your employing broker, you can't have just a post office box. You have to have a physical place where you're doing business. The exception to that, continuing, in case a real estate broker maintains more than one place of business within the state, the broker shall be responsible for supervising all licensed activities in the other offices. But another one here, it says, who is exempt from having that location licensing issue here? A place of business, and that's someone in the employ of another broker. There's 3 levels. You start out as an associate broker in Colorado. You were all brokers. We're a single licensing state. Colorado was the first state to do this. When I first got my license, way the heck back when, I had to get my salesman's license, and then I had to get a bunch of experience, several years experience, then take more classes, and then pass another test to get my broker's license. You guys don't have to do that anymore. You will pass that state exam, remember, the first time, one and done, and then you will be an associate broker. Right out of, you never have to take that test again the rest of your life, ever. Very cool. You don't want to. And so you'll take that test, and then you will be an associate broker, and then you'll go to work for an employing broker for 2 years, a 2-year apprenticeship. And after that 2-year apprenticeship, you can then become an independent broker, one-person shop, or you can take what's called a 24-hour broker administration course and become an employing broker. So those are the 3 levels: an associate broker, independent broker, one-person shop, and an employing broker where you have brokers underneath you. Those are the 3 levels of brokers. And the associate broker does not have to have a place of business. Only the employing broker.
How about the independent?
Independent, yes, they do. They have to have a physical, even if it's just a room in your house, you have to have a physical address if you're an independent broker. Like I say, you just can't have a post office box. But as an associate broker, you don't have to have anything as far as that goes, because everything revolves around your employing broker. Let's go to 4A here. An applicant for a broker's license shall be at least 18 years of age. Big star by that. Another guaranteed question on the state exam. You have to be at least 18. You don't have to have a high school diploma. I'm at 4A. 4A on page 1-8. And you don't have to have a high school diploma to do that. Now, if anybody here have a degree in real estate, bachelor's degree? If you do, you don't have to take this course. You just go and take the state exam. But very few people do. My degree actually is in valuation sciences. It's actually an appraisal degree, in appraising. So if, in that sense, I wouldn't have to take this course to go take the state exam. So just as an example. Now, let's talk about the test. Let's talk about the test. On page 1-9, it talks about it. Let's just talk about generalities and specifics. You're going to call it PSI, get that test set up. You don't even think about doing it until, about the last week of this course, and then start taking our finals. You're going to start off with 201, and then 202, then 303, and then your ultimate. You don't have to write that down. Anyway, but those are the 4 tests that you have to take. The last week of this course, start taking those. And what's going to happen is you're going to take them, and every test that's in this course, I design them so that you will fail them. I want you to miss as many questions as you can, because every question you miss in class is a question you won't miss on that state exam. So I'm rooting for you to just blow them all. Okay? I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm saying, again, if you miss something here in class, you won't miss it on that state exam. And your goal is not to pass the tests here in class. That's not your final goal, is to pass that state exam. It's going to take 110% effort to pass it. It is a very, it's the most difficult exam in the nation. So let's talk about this. You're going to go down and take the state exam. And what's going to happen is you cannot bring in your own calculator. The calculator will be there for you. You cannot bring in your own pencil. You have to keep your purse in the car, or they have a locker there you can put it in. You can't bring in your own wallet, and you can't bring in your cell phone. You're lucky they let you wear clothes. And so you're going to go walk in there, and what's going to happen is there'll be about 7 people taking their tests. And so you're going to sit down, and they have a camera up there watching you to make sure you don't cheat. And you turn on your computer, and it's very user-friendly. If you've never seen a computer, you'll be fine. And you can do some practice questions if you want to. And then they'll say, are you ready for the test? And you say, yes, I am. And they start the test. And you start out with the general portion. That's the law and practice portion. And what you have on that is 80 questions. The first 10 questions are story questions. I hate them. They're long, and they're hard, and they're a tremendous time consumer. Skip them. Go to question 11 and finish 11 through 70. You know, the way you want to do is go from 11 to 70. Don't, if you're not 100% sure with your answer, just leave it blank. Because a few questions later might answer that one. So if you go from 1 to 70, and then they're going to say, do you want to go to the next section? And you say, no, I want to review. You press the button. Then you go from 70 back to 11. Okay? Now, go back to the 10 story questions. And do those 10 story questions, and then go from 11 up to 70. And if you need to review those 10 story questions again, do it. But you have 2 hours to do that first section. Plenty of time. Plenty of time. Don't do those first 10 questions first, because they might take you an hour. And you're going to freak out. You're going to say, should I got another 70 questions and it took me an hour to do the first 10? Time is not an issue. You have plenty of time. So then you're going to get back to the 80th question, and they're going to say, do you want to go to the next portion, which is the Colorado portion, which we're in right now? And you say yes. And they say, are you sure you want to go? And you say yes. And they say, if you go to this next section, you cannot come back here. Are you really sure you want to go? And you actually have to type in the word yes. Seriously. Then you hit it, and you're in the Colorado portion. Now, in the general portion, the one we just finished, you have to get 75% on that state exam. You can miss 20 out of those 80s and pass. 20 out of those 80 questions and still pass. Then you get to the Colorado portion, you only need to get a 70% on the Colorado portion. No story questions.
How many questions are left?
74. 74. They're actually going to be 79. 5 of them are going to be test questions that don't count. They use them because they might be questions they'll use later. Like if every student misses every one, they'll just throw them out. If every student gets them all right, they'll throw them out. So out of those 79 questions, 74 count. And you don't know which ones those 5 are that don't count. And so you're going to do the same thing. Go from 1 to 74, 74 back to 1, and then 1 to 74 again. And the last time you make sure all of them are answered. They will tell you if you didn't answer any of them. It's very user-friendly. You get all the way through, and then they say, how were our facilities? Were we nice to you? How was the temperature? Things like this. And then you press that last button, and right on the screen it tells you that you passed and what your score is. Before you even stand up, you know that you passed. And so then you walk out there, and they have your certificate for you. Before you go in the room, they're going to take your picture, and then they'll give you your certificate and show you what your scores were. And you're going to have a smile on your face you can't get rid of for about 3 days, because you've never worked so hard on anything in your life. And most people, guys too, end up crying on the way to the car. Seriously, because you have so much stress involved in this, because this is so important. It's going to be one of the toughest things you've ever been through in your life. But once you pass that, you got that broker's license for the rest of your life, guys. Pretty cool, pretty cool. And that second portion, you have 1 hour and 50 minutes. So you have essentially 4 hours to do the exam. I had a student come in one time after he took it, He said, it was funny. He said, I was in there with 7 other people, and none of them were from the school here. And, you have 4 hours to do it. And he said, after about 45 minutes, one of them gets up and he's done. Another one, after about an hour and a half, gets up and does it. He said, after 2 hours, he said, I was the only one left in the room. He said, I felt like such a stupid, like I was just dumb. He said, it took me the whole 4 hours to do it. And I passed, and I went out to turn in the certificate to the guys out there, and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry you guys had to stick around and wait for me to get done. All those other people were done so quickly. And they told him, they said, you're the only one who passed. So use as much time as you need for that state exam. That's what that time is there for. Any questions? Let's go to page 1-10. On C, on 10, what they talk about is a hardship license. Maybe your broker leaves. And there's nobody in the company who is an employing broker at that status. What they will do is issue a temporary license, the Real Estate Commission will, for 9 months. Possibly another 9 months, but never over 18 months. That's a hardship case. 9 months, then another 9 months. That's in a hardship case in case the broker dies or the broker leaves and there's nobody in there. On the state exam, it's going to ask that person who's appointed by the Real Estate Commission to stand in that position, even though he doesn't have an employing license status, has to have at least 2 years experience. At least 2 years experience. What they do on the state exam is they say, who can be appointed as a temporary broker? And the answer is someone with 11 years experience. Just to get you.
Okay.
If you have 11 years experience, you definitely have 2 years experience, right? So look for that 11-year answer. Okay, I'm going to hit you with that in class here too, so you'll be ready for it.
Is that also the case if your employing broker has his license inactivated for whatever reason?
Very good.
Investigation.
Very good question. What if it just they put it on it's not help me out here. Not inactive, but they put it on not default. I can't think of the darn word anyway. But they put his license on hold because he did something wrong. Yeah, and if that's the case, and there's nobody in that company that can step up, then they'll go ahead and just appoint somebody in there who has at least 2 years experience. Okay, now, look at number 9 down here. Number 9. No license for a broker registered as being employed in the employment of the broker shall be issued to a partnership, an LLC, company or corporation, or under a fictitious name or trade name, except that a married woman may elect to use her birth name. Again, you have to get it underneath an actual name. You're not licensed underneath a corporation, it's licensed underneath your own name. Mm-hmm. And no person shall be licensed as a real estate broker under more than one name, and no person shall conduct or promote a real estate brokerage business except under the name under which that person is licensed. This is common sense. You're going to be licensed under your legal name. And the licensed attorney shall take and pass the examination. Attorneys in most states don't have to be licensed. In Colorado, they do. They have to pass that same test we have to pass, guys. And they have to take a 12-hour class. And there's not a broker in the state who can take that 12-hour class and pass that exam. I developed a 24-hour class just for attorneys. And without fail, when they take that 24-hour class, they come to me and say, this is tough. I need to take the whole course, and they will. They'll take that whole course and then take the state exam. And every attorney, when they've taken that state exam, has the same response, that state exam for real estate broker's license is on a par with the attorney's license. Isn't that something? I've never taken the bar exam, but I take that real estate exam every year. And I'll tell you guys, it's gonna take 110% effort to get through with that. So you pass your state exam, and you go out and you sit in your car, and you just, it's like a load off your shoulders. You've just had one of the greatest accomplishments of your life, and then you're gonna go, now what? You know, I got two people who want to find a home. How do I find them houses? How do I show houses? I got a couple of people who want to list their home. How do I list these houses? That's what those first 2 years are about, guys. They're the mechanics of the industry. You're not going to walk out of that 2-year apprenticeship being a professional real estate broker. That's what the next 20 years are all about. And you don't know where you're going to end up in this business. As a mortgage broker plus a real estate broker, in property management, are you going to end up in new home sales? You don't know where this career is going to take you. So just go with the flow. Go with the flow. Look on page 1-11. Look at that number 1 toward the top of the page there. Every licensee under this Part 1 is except an inactive broker or an attorney's licensed who maintains a policy of professional malpractice insurance that provides coverage for errors and omissions for their activities as licensed under this Part 1. What they're talking about here is errors and omissions insurance. And you will have errors and omissions. Now, you cannot get your license given to you until those fingerprints come back, and you have to also have errors and omissions insurance in place. Now, this thing with the fingerprints coming back, it used to be that as long as you got your fingerprints done, they give you your license, and then if there was a problem, they'd call you in and talk to you. But several years ago, there was this TV station and this reporter who found this terrible evil that was being done, where real estate brokers were getting their license before it went through the CBI and everything. And so that's when they came up with this idea that those licenses for the fingerprints had to be through before you can get your license. I say before we didn't have to. And about that time when they did that, they decided that they would make every broker who, when they get your license reinitiated again every 3 years, would have to also get their fingerprints done. It just jammed up the system, something terrible. And then about that time, mortgage brokers got licensed, and they had to get their fingerprints. It was taking months for this to get done. And real estate brokers were prohibited from practicing until those fingerprints came in. It was a real pain. And I'm hesitant to say who that radio station is and who the guy was who did it, but their initials are Channel 7 and John Ferrugia. The second paragraph from the bottom of this page. Again, just make sure that, again, get your fingerprints done in the next 10 days. Do yourself a favor and do that, okay? When do they do the fingerprints? It's like from 10 to 12 and 1 to 3, or is that what it is?
Like between the class, there's certain times that we're there.
So it's 10 to noon and 1 to 3, is that what it is?
It's actually,
Or 2:45.
when I went yesterday, I was able to take it, it was after 12:45 and then 3 o'clock. I went in the afternoon session.
Okay.
In the morning, I think you have to do it after like 8:30 and then like 11:40, or they have like weird time, 11:45 or 11:40, something
That's
like
because
that.
they're administrating the class from 8 and 12:30, so they work the fingerprinting around that.
Do you have to make an appointment to do the
No,
fingerprint?
No.
you can just walk in.
Okay.
And it'll take you some time. Sometimes.
It's a very hidden building too.
And it's
It doesn't have anything on the outside.
There's
so-
nothing on the outside that says what it is or anything. And you can call up PSI, which don't do it.
Mm-mm.
Call them up, if you call them after 6 in the morning, you're not going to get a hold of them.
Yeah,
Tell you right now.
I tried to call them to
Yeah.
ask questions, so I just decided to drive over there.
You try to call them at noon, you're not going to get through to them, guys, to find out when the license. But it's only 1.5 miles
Yeah.
from here. Just go up there and tell them about the fingerprints. They'll say, "We'll come back in an hour," whatever. So, and we have some days where we don't go till 3, so you're able to go ahead and get over there. Like yesterday was a short day.
Mm-hmm.
Next Thursday will be a short day, so you might want to consider going over there next Thursday. Not this Thursday, next Thursday. Okay, let's keep going, guys. Bottom page 111, second to last paragraph down there, where it says, the commission shall make available for each licensee a license in such form and size as said commission shall prescribe and adopt. The real estate license shall show the name of the licensee and shall have imprinted thereon the seal or facsimile of the Department of Regulatory Agencies, and in addition, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this license is no big deal. It looks like that. You know, you put it in your wallet, and then your employing broker will have a bigger one that he will have on the wall. So that's what kind of license you're going to have. And you have to carry it with you when you're practicing. And what happens in the last paragraph there, it talks, there shall be a committee of 5 members appointed by the governor. The real estate commission has 5 members. The appraisal board is made up of 7 members. You don't need to know this, this is just for information. And then we have the mortgage broker board, which is made up of 5 members. Now, I was very involved. I worked for 8 years to get the mortgage brokers licensed. I worked for several committees. I was on the board of directors of the Colorado Association of Mortgage Brokers. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But what happened is that we got the mortgage brokers licensed. Literally took us 8 years to do it. And then about 2 years later, they decided that they would put the board in place with 5 members. Well, I applied to get it, to be on that board, and so did Bart Bartholomew, a good friend of mine. You guys will see Bart will come in here. He's very involved in real estate in this industry. And then also Cheryl Dingwell. The 3 of us were on the board of directors of the Colorado Association of Mortgage Brokers. And we were, you know, like I say, worked our buns off to finally get them licensed. And so we all applied. And what happened is there's only 5 members. So they wouldn't let all 3 of us on there because they said if we did, we'd own the board because we'd have a majority vote. And so I stepped down and let those guys just go ahead and get it. So they've been on the board ever since, and Bart's been the chair of the board. So he'll be in. He sticks his head in here every now and then, and just he's one of the top mortgage brokers in Colorado. Plus, of course, he's right on the forefront because he's on the board for the mortgage brokers in the state of Colorado. And all the changes that are happening in lending, which are considerable, and all the new forms and whatever. He comes in about once a month for about 15 minutes, gives me a heart attack, and then leaves. You know, so he'll come in every now and then and talk to you about what's going on. But there's so many changes. You know, we as real estate brokers don't have nearly the changes that the lenders do and the title companies do. And again, they're the ones who are watching our backs. And inspectors. Inspectors are an anomaly in our business. They're not licensed. They're not registered. Nobody knows how many they are. Isn't that something? And they're in that house by themselves. They can ransack that house if they want to, and they're not even licensed. There's a move afoot. They were supposed to be licensed by the end of this year, and it never got out of committee. We'll see if we can get them licensed next year. But again, but home inspectors are another person who's really watching our back to make sure that home is in the condition that we sold it in. There's no surprises. And we'll talk about that. We're going to have an inspector actually come in and talk to you in a couple of weeks. So you'll be able to even ask them questions or whatever. Let's go down to the bottom page 1-13. When I tell you to highlight things in this book, guys, that's all you need to highlight. And don't ever read ahead in this book. There are a ton of mistakes, and they love repeating themselves over and over again. I've torn this book apart. I know which parts you need, so don't read ahead in this book. The Law and Practice book, you bet. That's a wonderful book if you want to read ahead and do some studying. In this book, if you want to go over the stuff we went in class, you bet. But don't read ahead.
Should we read what you didn't cover?
No.
Okay.
If I didn't cover it, just skip it.
Okay.
Just skip it, okay? Because a lot of it's wrong.
Okay.
And a lot of it is just repetition over and over again. So, if I don't tell you to put a star by it, don't mess with it. On page 1-13, look at the bottom of the page, the 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom down there. Look at this number 1. Immediate notice shall be given in a manner acceptable to the commission by each licensee of any change of business location or employment. A change of business address or employment without notification to the commission shall automatically inactivate the licensee's license. So, when you're going to go to work for somebody, guys, like I say, go and start interviewing, but don't get obsessed with it. Like, oh, all I think about is who I'm going to go to work for. No. Get your license first. Get focused on getting that license. Then, go ahead and decide who you're going to go to work for. And if you go to work for that company, make sure you go to work for somebody who has the training. Go for the training. Don't go for the money. Go for the training. If you don't go for the training, you're not going to make any money. You might say, well, this company pays better, but this company had better training. Go for the training. So I'm going to keep saying that throughout this course. Now, if you go to work for a particular company, what if it doesn't work out? You didn't marry him. You just went to work for him. Go to another company. Hopefully you'll go to work for a company and stay with them for 30 years. And that does happen, guys. It does happen. But don't, I say, get obsessed with who you're going to be going to work for. Look at the bottom paragraph on 113. In the event that any licensee is discharged by or terminates employment with the broker, it shall be the joint duty of both such parties to immediately notify the commission. Put a star by that. So who has to notify the commission if you change employees?
Employer
Both of
and
you do.
licensee.
Both of you do. Top of page 1-14. Top of page 14, the paragraph 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down on the right-hand side, where it says not more than one employer or place of employment shall be shown for any real estate broker for the same period of time. You can only be employed or be underneath one employing broker. You can't be underneath more than one. Go down to number 2 on that page. The proper fee shall accompany each application for licensure, and the fee shall not be refundable. Failure by the person taking examination to file the appropriate broker's application within 1 year of the date such person passed the examination will automatically cancel the examination. All rights to passing score will be terminated. After you pass the exam, you have 1 year to do something with it. Colorado is one of the few states where we can get our license on inactive status. You don't have to decide who you're going to be going with. Maybe you just want, you're working, you don't want to get going right away. You can take your license on inactive status, but do something with it within that first year after you pass the exam. And I have several students that come to me in any given year and say, man, that year went by and I didn't do anything with my license. Hey man, you have to take the test again. It doesn't make their day. You know, it's, remember, you have to do something with that license you have a year. Now, look at the bottom of that page where it says that you can get your license. You can get your license, look at the very bottom of that page, and it's every 3 years at 12 midnight at the end of the third year. And they've changed that. It's not on midnight of the third year anymore. And again, there's a lot of mistakes in this book. So look on the top of page 115 where it says at 12 midnight on December 31st of the third year. It's not. Let's read this 1, 2, and 3 down here. So you renew your license every 3 years on your anniversary date. And it says the proper application is made within 31 days after the date of expiration by payment of the regular 3-year renewal fee. You have a 31-day grace period to renew your license. And during that 31 days you do it, then everything's cool except for one thing. If you're going through that 31-day grace period, you cannot practice real estate if you haven't renewed your license, because your license is on inactive status until you renew it. There's no late fee or anything. You have a 31-day grace period, but you can't practice real estate until you renew it. And if proper application is made more than 31 days, but within 1 year after the date of expiration by payment of the regular three-year renewal fee and payment of the reinstatement fee equal to 1/2. I renewed my license last year, I think it was $160. If I did it after the 31 days, but within a year, they would have hit me for another $80 fine, late fee. The $160 plus half that much again. Because that was after the 31 days, but less than a year. If proper application is made more than 1 year, but within 3 years after the date of expiration by payment of the regular 3 renewal fee and payment of a reinstatement fee equal to the regular 3-year fee. So if it was after 1 year, but within 3 years, I pay that $160 plus another $160. Look at number 5 down here. The suspension, expiration, or revocation of a real estate broker's license shall automatically inactivate every real estate broker's license where the holder of such license is shown in the commission records to be the employee of the broker. Again, we talked about that earlier. If your broker again leaves, your license is on the inactive status. It's not revoked, it's on inactive status. Look at this B up above here. The B above 5, where it says, any reinstated license shall be effective as of the date of reinstatement. Any person who fails to apply for reinstatement within 3 years after the expiration of a license shall, without exception, be treated as a new applicant for licensure. So if you you let your license go into inactive status and you don't renew it after 3 years, it's like you never got a license. You have to pass the state exam again and take this course. Now, I get several people a year who that happens to. Maybe
So is it just the state, or you have to take both of them? The general?
both.
Uh-huh.
You have to take both of them. And what happens, maybe you get your license in Colorado, then you go to work in Arizona, and you get your license in Arizona, you let your license lapse here, then you move back to Colorado. Yeah, you gotta take the course and the exam just like you were never licensed here. Now, Colorado does have reciprocity with every state except Texas, so you do get a little break.
But can you hold the license to both states?
Yes, you can have a
One
license.
state?
Yeah, the question is, can you have a license in 2 states? You got a license in all 50 states if you want to. Now, once you pass the Colorado license, guys, if you want to get licensed in another state, go take it. You'll breeze through any other license. If you can pass Colorado, you'll pass any state. And PSI is like in 18 states, I believe, where you're going to take your license. And in that case, you just have to call them up and say, I'm going to go take your exam. Can I do it for California? Can I do it for whatever other states they have? And you don't have to go to that state. You can just go right here to one of their testing states, testing sites, and do it.
Do you need another form like the REC 33
You need an REC 33?
from other states?
No, you
Okay.
don't. See what that other state wants, okay? Call up that other state and see what they want. They might have you take a couple classes, who knows? Who knows? But get that test taken. You'll breeze through that. You might miss a couple questions on the California portion that is different from Colorado and you didn't know it. But real estate is real estate. All the terms are the same, and you're going to breeze through any other exam in any state after you pass Colorado. Let's go to page 1-16. Now, when you take, it talks about in this part, about every 3 years, you're going to have 24 hours of continuing education. I'm going to hit you with this, with questions and everything else, which means you have to have 8 hours a year. Of those 8 hours a year, which means what? 8 hours a year, 1 day a year? It's hardly overwhelming. Go back to page 115, 115 if you will. And what happens is that the Real Estate Commission has a 4-hour update course that they require us to take every year. Bottom paragraph on page 1-15. The Real Estate Commission shall develop 12 hours of credit designed to assure reasonable currency of real estate knowledge by licensees, which credit shall include an update of the current statutes and the rule promulgated by the commission that affects the practice of real estate. What that means is that every year we take the 4-hour mandatory. So 4 hours first year, 4 hours second year, 4 hours third year. We need 24 hours. 12 of it is taken care of by the update course. So you need 12 hours of electives. And you can get them from us. We have a lot of classes that you can take. We have the most popular one, of course, is the contracts class. We're going to be doing the listing contract tomorrow morning, and then the buy and sell contract, the purchase contract, later on in this course. And you can take those again next year for continuing education. And that's 6 hours of your 12 hours of electives, because they changed that contract this time every 2 years, but sometimes they'll change that contract every year. So come and take that contract class from us and to get your continuing ed. Look on the bottom of page 1-16. Actually look at the top where it says 3 and then all those things down there. Now, when you take a continuing education class, ask that school if this class is approved for continuing education. There's a lot of classes that you're going to take out there that are not approved for continuing ed. For instance, I had this one class. It was really a cool class. I did it in conjunction with this cop out of Boulder. And what he did is he invented this keychain for women to keep in their purse. And he had this 1-hour class on how women could use this keychain to protect themselves. But I couldn't get it approved for continuing education because it wasn't real estate specific. Which means what? Look on page 1-16. It has to be one of these subjects here. That's mainly for us, not for you guys. But again, it has to be real estate specific, or else we can't get it approved by the commission for continuing education. Look at the very last paragraph on page 1-16, where it says disposition of fees. It says all fees collected by the Real Estate Commission under parts 1 and 4 of this article, not including administrative fees that are in the nature of the administrative fine, and fees retained by contractors pursuant to contracts granted or entered into in accordance with the state statute, shall be transmitted to the state treasurer, who shall credit the same to the Division of Real Estate Cash Fund. Just put a little star by that. There's a question, I haven't seen it for a while on the state exam that talks about this. Where do all the funds go? They go to the state treasurer and then they're rerouted to the Real Estate Commission. Let's go to page 1-18 and look at this 1A. What can you, talking about issues that you might get in, have trouble with. Let's go to 1A here on page 1-18. Knowingly making any misrepresentations and knowingly making any use of any false or misleading advertising could get you into trouble. Making any promise of a character which influences, persuades, or induces another person when he could not or did not intend to keep such promises. Knowingly misrepresenting or making false promises through agents, advertising, or otherwise. Violating any provision of the Colorado Consumer Protection Act, which we'll talk about. Acting for more than one party in a transaction without the knowledge of all parties. I have both ends of the deal. I have the listing and I'm bringing in the buyer. I like that. But both parties have to know I'm working with both parties, right? We'll talk about that in just a little bit in much more detail. Representing or attempting to represent a real estate broker other than the licensee's employer without the express knowledge and consent of that employer. We can only be paid by our employing broker. That's the only one we can get any fees through, is our employing broker. And in the case of a broker registered in the employ of another broker failing to place as soon as receipt as is practically possible in the custody of that licensed broker employer any deposit money or other money or fund entrusted by the employer by any person dealing with the employee as the representative of that licensed broker employee. What are they talking about? I'm working with this buyer, and I draw up a contract for this buyer, and he gives me a deposit check. What's that deposit check called? Earnest money. Earnest money. Why is that? It's to take the home off the market. It's called earnest money because it shows the seller how earnest this buyer is to buy the property. How soon do I have to get that money to my employing broker? Immediately. Whatever that means to you, okay? So you're going to get that contract and that check to your employing broker, and what are you going to do then? Remember this, get a receipt. Get a receipt, guys. I know you're working for this guy and you trust him implicitly, but your office should have a policy where they will not accept any earnest money checks without giving a receipt. Things disappear off of my desk all the time. You guys probably the same thing. Get a receipt for that money. That might be worth the price of admission today. Just that, okay? Let's go over to page 1-19 and look at that top page there. I, second paragraph, failing to maintain possession for future use or inspection by an authorized representative of the commission for a period of 4 years. How long do we have to keep our records? 4 years. 4 years. Now, who has to keep the records? Only the employing broker. Only the employing broker. We, as associate brokers, if we're working for that employer, don't have to keep records, but we should. Only the employing broker has a responsibility, and he has to keep them for 4 years. Guaranteed question.
So my question to you is, if you get added, let's say,
Audited?
do you get added individually, or you get added by the employer broker?
What if you get audited, or what if you get what happens? Let's say we're going to talk about this in greater detail in just a little bit. You get a complaint.
Okay.
Are they going to go after your broker? It all depends. Was it because he did not supervise you that you got this complaint, or what? But they're going to be looking at that employing broker actually first to see what this complaint is all about.
If I get added and they need my records, the only reason why it's relating to this 4-year period, do I have to provide the paperwork for that time frame, or does the employer broker have to provide the paperwork for those?
Okay, the question was, in Liliana, it's unique because she's a property manager, okay? And they want to come in and they want to audit her. They're not going to audit you. They're going to audit your employing broker.
Okay.
Is what they're going to do, because your employing broker is the only one who has escrow accounts. You as an associate broker will never have
Okay.
escrow accounts. What are escrow accounts? OPM, other people's money. We're going to spend 2 full days on trust accounts. 2 full sessions on trust accounts. So, again, it's very, very important that you understand how money happens in this business, needless to say. Look on, again, we're on page 118 here, where it says, let's look at this number G.5 here. Converting funds of others, diverting funds of others without proper authorization, commingling funds of others with the broker's own funds, or failing to keep such funds of others in an escrow or trust account with some bank or recognized depository. Let's talk about this. First of all, this is your employing broker who has these funds. Now, he cannot just go in there and pull them out anytime he wants to. That money does not belong to him, does it? He cannot keep any of, this is for other people's money. Can he keep any of his money in there? No. But you have to have some of your money in there to open up the account and everything. How much of his own money can a broker have in that account? Enough to maintain that account. We'll talk about that a little bit later also. But how much of an employing broker's own money can he have in there? Enough to maintain the account. Remember that word, maintain the account. And if he mixes his company money in with that escrow money, that's called commingling. Or if he takes it out for his own use, that's conversion or reversion. I got a call from a buddy, well, he's the next student here. He and I know each other real well now, but what happened is he called me up, he said, you won't believe it. He said, my next door neighbors have a big property management company, and Saturday morning they decided to kind of tie one on, and by noon they got a bright idea. They pulled $21,000 out of their escrow account and went up to Blackhawk and lost it. And I said, really? I said, man. And when they get audited by the real estate commission, and they will eventually get audited, even if the money's back in there,
They
the
should.
real estate commission is going to say, what happened to that money for the month it was gone? They're going to say, well, you know, they better have a real good reason, or there will be charges pressed against them for that. You hear these stories every now and then. You see them on the news and whatever, where real estate brokers take this money out for their own use. Oh, they're going to repay it. It's not their money to even take out of there in the first place. Serious, serious stuff. Now, another thing down here, that last line where it says, of others in an escrow or trust account with some bank or recognized depository. Now, that's the correct way it's versed. On the state exam, it says recognize that they have to keep it in some recognized bank depository. Well, they don't have to keep it in a bank. Most brokers give their escrow money to a title company to hold. So this is wrong on the state exam, but it's just a little wrong. Again, they're going to say on the state exam, a recognized bank depository.
And that's the right answer.
That's the right answer, but it's wrong, okay, on the state exam. But it's just a little wrong. And I'll show you that question when we get to it. You'll be in good shape. Look at J on the top page, on the second paragraph, page 19. Paying a commission or valuable consideration for performing any of the functions of a real estate broker as described in this Part 1 to any person not licensed under this Part 1, except that a licensed broker may pay a finder's fee or a share of any commission on a cooperative sale where such payment is made to a real estate broker licensed in another state or country. If a country does not license real estate brokers, then the payee must be a citizen, a resident of such country, and represent that the payee is in the business of selling real estate in said country. We cannot pay or receive any kickbacks or referral fees except to other licensed real estate brokers. That's under what? What regulates that? It's called RESPA, Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act. You don't have to write that down. We talk about RESPA so often. You'll never forget RESPA. And what RESPA does, it regulates how closings are to proceed, Real Estate Settlement Closings Procedures Act, if you want to put it that way. And they regulate how closings are to happen and also how we handle kickbacks, referral fees. I'm listing this property, and you bring in the buyer, and I give you what's called a co-op fee. I give you a cut of my commission on that because you brought in the buyer. You have to be licensed as a real estate broker for me to legally pay you any fees from that deal. Your next door neighbor gives you a lead, and you make $20,000 on that lead, and you go and say, give him a couple $1,000. No, you can't do that. You can't give them any kind of kickback or referral fee. It's against the law to do it. What can you do? You can give them, maybe take them out to dinner, give them a gift certificate. Don't buy them a car. Something like that. Make sure it's reasonable. We're going to talk about this many more times.
So when is it? So you're talking about outside the transaction, correct?
Outside of the transaction. No, I'm talking about actually inside the transaction, actually. Where let's say, let's say, like say your next door neighbor gives you a lead or something, or some friend of yours gives you a lead, you cannot give them a referral fee unless they're a licensed real estate broker. We can only pay a referral fee to licensed real estate brokers.
So when does it apply that if the owner and the seller are okay with it?
Okay, if the owner and seller are okay with it, we still can't do it.
Okay.
No, we cannot do it. We can never give or receive a referral fee. We'll talk about that at greater detail. I love it when you're ahead of me. It means you're paying attention. Okay? And we're going to talk about that in another chapter or two. And there's a whole section that we're going to be talking about where what the law says about giving up referral fees. And there's a lot of confusion in our industry about it. We'll talk about specifics when we get there.
So there's a difference between giving them and receiving them.
There's a difference between giving a referral fee or receiving a referral fee. We can do neither. Mortgage brokers are going to come up to you guys when you're licensed and say, every deal you run through me, I'll throw you back a couple $100. Oh, no. No. That's against the law to do that.
Even if we're licensed brokers.
Even if you're licensed real estate brokers, they're not licensed real estate brokers themselves. They're licensed mortgage brokers.
So it's broker to broker only.
Real estate broker to real estate broker, exactly. I had a guy call me, this is a while back, and he said, does Colorado have reciprocity with Idaho? I said, I don't know. Call up Idaho and see what they want, I said, why? And he said, one of my brokers underneath me, that's where she's from, and she wants to fly out there every weekend and show property to her family. I said, you're kidding. I said, why don't you call up a broker in Idaho and tell them that you want a referral fee, 20%, 25%, whatever the market will bear, and anything they make on that deal, she gets 20, 25%. And he said, they can do that? I said, yes, as long as that broker's licensed in Idaho, sure. You can do it across state lines. I probably saved her a whole lot of money and a whole lot of grief. Because I tell you what, when you're working with your own family, they want you to work harder on their deal than any other deal you have, and they want you to do it for free. So working with family isn't great in this business. Sometimes it's okay, but don't count on it. You say, I want to get my license so I can sell my family's properties. You might want to reconsider even getting your license, guys, because your family's not going to be your main source of income. You want to help your family, and you do, but still. Now, let's go down to the bottom of this page, 119, and talk about how we can get in trouble, where it says Article 3 down here toward the bottom is titled Offenses Against the Person, that consists of 4 parts: homicide, assault, kidnapping, unlawful sexual behavior. Article 4 deals with offenses against property, under which Part 1 is arson, Part 2 burglary, Part 3 robbery, Part 4 is theft. Article 5 consists of offenses involving fraud, including forgery, obtaining a signature by deception, offering a false instrument for recording. Part 2 is fraud, obtaining property or services, like dual contracts. I have 2 contracts, one that's legit, one that's phony. I use the phony one to get a deal done, to get a loan. That's fraud. And fraudulent sales and business practices, unlawful activities concerning the sale of land. Part 4 is bribery. Part 5, offenses relating to the Uniform Commercial Code. Part 7, financial transactions, device crimes like ATMs. Part 8 is equity skimming. Now this is interesting. Equity skimming happened quite a bit back in the 80s when the interest rates on home were 16 and 17%. There wasn't a lot of new loans going on back then. The way you bought a home is you just assumed a loan. You paid $46 and just took over somebody's loan, is how you did it. But what they did back then is you didn't have to qualify for it until 1990. Before 1990, you did not have to qualify to assume this loan and take it over. You paid $46 and took over this guy's loan. Well, what happened is that this guy who sold you the house remained primarily liable, and he didn't know it. You were just secondarily liable for buying this home. That's how it worked back then. And what a lot of people were doing is they were taking over these homes, putting renters in there, and as they made the rent payments, they didn't pay off the mortgage. They just put the money in their pocket. And when the home went into foreclosure, they could care less because they went after the guy who sold them the house. It was called equity skimming. And it's still against the law, and it's a felony the second time you do it. The first time you do it, it's a freebie. Isn't that the craziest law you ever heard? And the second time you do it again, it's a class 5 felony. Pretty wild. Had a student in class, he said he and his wife had a rent with option on this property, where they're gonna buy it, after a year. And what happened is they kept making payments to the landlord, and the landlord wasn't paying the mortgage. And so it was going into foreclosure, and all the foreclosure statements came to the house. So these renters knew what was going on, and we're talking about this, and they're freaking out. It was like a $450,000 house. This is several years ago. And what happened is they told me one time, they said, yeah, that owner is a real estate broker. I said, really? I said, why don't you complain to the real estate commission that she's doing this, and maybe they can do something to help you. And so they did. They sent a letter in the real estate commission saying what was going on about this equity skimming, and the real estate commission sent a letter back and said, she can do it once. Isn't that something? Isn't that one of the craziest laws on the book? So equity skimming. Do we need a break? Let's take a 5-minute break, guys. Half a cigarette. How's that? Okay, moving right along here. And we're talking about the offenses here. We're talking about equity skimming. The next part consists of computer crime offenses. Number 6, offenses involving family relations. 7 consists of offenses relating to morals. Part 3 refers to government operations, specifically bribery and corrupt influence.
And we
You have
need
to
to
know
know
what-
all of those?
No, you don't need to know these guys. This is just for referencing. You already know them, really. You know when you're doing something wrong, pretty much. And number 15 deals with making, financing, and collection of loans, loan fraud, and also the Colorado Organized Crime Control Act. Now this is interesting. This one is called the COCA laws. They're actually the organized crime laws of Colorado. And if you do the same thing more than once, you could fall underneath organized crime laws. And this is a class 2 felony. The only thing worse than that is murder. I mean, you get life in prison for doing this thing.
See you in Florence.
Pardon me?
See you in Florence.
See you in Florence, is all right, yeah.
Definitely.
I'll tell you, it's funny what happened, well, not funny, but what happened, RESPA is the one who regulates this, and the head of RESPA is a guy named Mark Friedland. And what happened is, he was giving a talk at this luncheon one time, and he said before mortgage brokers were licensed, there was this one mortgage broker, and he was in cahoots with some real estate brokers and appraisers, and anyway, they were all a bunch of crooks. And what they did is a bunch of loans, and they used dead people's social security numbers, all a bunch of different things. Anyway, so they got caught, and the real estate brokers, they pled out, everybody got their plea deal, you know, they all went to jail for a time. Well, he said that since he wasn't licensed, it was up to these other people who were licensed to protect him. And so he was a victim, and he went to court. He received 14 felony counts, and 2 or 3 of them were the COCA laws. You know, they got him for wire fraud because he sent stuff over the fax machine, phone, all these other things. Mail fraud because he sent stuff through the mail, on and on. And this guy, I'm sure, will probably never see the light of day again. And for all of these deals, I think he made something like $23,000 to go to jail. Well, people, you end up, robbing banks a lot less than that. But this is something, again, these COCA laws, and a lot of people don't know about these, and they're very, very strict.
So that's why that real estate person could not do anything, because you're supposed to only do it once.
That's why the person, and if you do it more than once, it could fall underneath the COCA law. And then the next one deals with offenses, Uniform Controlled Substance Act. Violating or aiding and abetting in the violation of the Colorado or federal fair housing laws. We spent a lot of time in this course on fair housing. Failing to immediately notify the commission in writing of a conviction plea involving it. If you do get in trouble, guys, make sure that you tell the real estate commission that you had this felony against you or whatever. I was in my office about 4 or 5 years ago, and this lady came in, and she was just in tears. her brother was in Canyon City, and he was going to get out, and he said that the real estate commission was blocking his release, to a point anyway, because he didn't report that he had this felony. And I said, I was just shocked. And so I wrote a letter. I said, see if your brother can kind of put this in his own handwriting, his own words. And he sent it to the real estate commission. The real estate commission said, we won't block your release, but we will prohibit you from getting a real estate license for at least 5 years after he got out. So again, don't take this lightly. If you do get in trouble, let the real estate commission know that it happened. Again, you're a professional when you're out there. There's an obligation. Having demonstrated unworthiness or incompetency to act as a real estate broker by conducting business in such a manner as to endanger the interests of the public. In the case of a broker licensee failing to exercise reasonable supervision over the activities of licensed employees. Boy, I hate that word, reasonable. What the heck does that mean? Hopefully I'm correctly interpreting it and a judge isn't doing it for me. Like I say, not one of my least favorite words. Procuring or attempting to procure a real estate license, or renewing or reinstating or reactivating a real estate broker's license by fraud. You commit fraud by getting one. Claiming or arranging for or taking any secret or undisclosed amount of compensation or profit, or failing to reveal to a licensing's principal or employer the full amount of such employee's compensation. We can never receive an unearned fee from something inside the industry, from a title company, a lender, from an inspector, but we can get referral fees from people outside of the actual transaction. Roofers, anybody in construction, landscapers, concrete people, whatever. So we tell the seller, looks like you need a new roof. Let's get some bids on the roof. And my cousin's a roofer. Would you mind if he gave a bid? And if you accept his bid, he gives me a 10% referral fee. Is that okay with you? The seller has to okay it before you can get that referral fee. And then you have to run it through your employing broker besides. Any money you get in a deal, no matter where it comes from, has to be run through your employing broker.
So I have a question on that, because
Yeah.
we just went back, so we just covered referral fees. They're, the roofing company, they're obviously not gonna be a real estate, they're not gonna be licensed.
Right.
So what makes this okay other than,
What makes that okay to get some from a roofer but not from a mortgage broker? A mortgage broker is part of the deal.
okay,
Anybody outside of the actual transaction you
Okay.
can get a referral fee from, but not anybody who is part of the actual transaction. And we'll cover that many more times, and there'll be other stories about it too.
But you have to disclose it is the key.
You have to disclose it and get permission to get it from your client, and you have to run it through your employing broker besides. Look at the last paragraph on page 120 here. Failing to keep records documenting proof of completion for the continuing education requirements in accordance with this section for a period of 4 years. The Real Estate Commission has no clue what continuing education classes you're taking. Make sure that you keep your own records on that. And also, don't play games with these continuing education. They're going to ask you on your when you get your license re-upped again for reinstatement after every 3 years. They're going to say, did you complete your 24 hours? And you check the box, yes. And if you didn't, I'll tell you what happened. One of my people who was on my staff as an appraiser needs 42 hours every 3 years. And he didn't have his 42 hours. And he said, I'll just check that box. He checked the box, yes. The Real Estate Commission came after him like a mad dog. They were pressing perjury charges against this guy. And he was a very good friend of mine who did something really stupid. And I called up the Real Estate Commission, and the head of the Real Estate Commission at that time was Stuart Leach. And then he had his assistant, the deputy, who was Lee Ormiston. And, you know, I knew these guys really well, and I called up Stuart and I said, man, Stu, I said, this guy's one of the good guys, one of the top appraisers in the industry. And they said, we don't care. Those are exactly the kind of people we want to go after and make examples of. I went, whoa. So I took him in my office and I said, man, they're coming after you. And finally I went, after this went on for a couple of weeks, finally I went down there and talked to him. And I sat down eyeball to eyeball with both of them. I said, man, I said, if this was one of the losers out there, I can see it. The guy did something stupid. And so, you know, fine him, take away his license for a while, but don't get perjury charges against him. And I didn't see, you know, and anyway, they said, nope, we're going after him. So I went back and, sat the guy down. I said, wow, you're in for a tough go. Well, about 3 days later, Lee Ormiston called me back and he said, so this guy, you're really going to bat for this guy. I said, I am. He's one of the best appraisers out there. He did something really stupid. And he knows it, you know it, I know it. What else can we do? And they said, well, Stuart and I talked about it. What we're going to do, we're going to take away his license for 6 months, and he has to complete all 42 hours in the next month. And I went, thank you. He'll be able to do that, and they did that. But guys, the point is, don't lie when you're reinstating your license. Make sure you're very, very up to date on that you're very cool, that you don't exaggerate. Let's look at this. This we were just talking about, page 122 at the bottom, top page 123. Like I said, any of these people you cannot get a referral fee from. Title examinations, services rendered by an attorney, preparation of title documents, property surveys, all these things you cannot get a referral fee from. But outside of those, that list right there, you can. You don't need to know that list, just be familiar with it. And look at this 2A right after that. An affiliated business arrangement is permitted where the person referring business to the affiliated business arrangement receives payment only in the form of returns on an investment. An affiliated business arrangement, an ABA, or CBA, controlled business arrangements, what they're called. They were real popular 10 years ago. They've kind of fallen out of favor. But you will see them, a one-stop shop, where you have a broker, and then you have a title company in there, a lender in there, maybe a moving company, maybe an inspection company, maybe an appraisal company, underneath one roof. Affiliated business arrangement. You cannot receive referral fees from within that circle. That's why they're kind of not around anymore. It's because of that. Look at this D-Dog down here. No licensee shall give or accept any fee, kickback, or other thing of value pursuant to any agreement or understanding, oral or otherwise, that business incident to or part of a settlement service involving an affiliated business arrangement shall be referred to any provider of settlement services. Again, within that affiliated business arrangement, you cannot get referral fees, but they might give your people a discount in the cost. And this next one, nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit payment of a fee to an attorney for services actually rendered. An attorney works on something, gives the fee. A title insurance company to its duly appointed agent for services actually performed. And the issuance of a policy of title insurance. Those of you who've had closings know exactly what that is. We have our closing lady who closes our deals for us, and they charge a fee. And a lender to its duly appointed agent for services actually performed in the making of a loan. So again, we, of course, can pay these service fees for these professionals working for us.
But most of those we don't necessarily pay, the buyer would pay on the settlement, right?
Very good, what Mike just said. He said we don't pay that, the buyer pays that. The buyer and seller actually split that fee for that professional to sit there. For the most part, whatever you put down in your contract. When we get to closings, we'll talk about that in greater detail. Let's look on the bottom page 125, second to last paragraph on 125. Any unlawful act or violation of any of the provisions of this Part 1 upon the part of an employee, officer, or member of a licensed real estate broker shall not be cause for disciplinary action against a real estate broker, should be employing broker, unless it appears to the satisfaction of the commission that the real estate broker had actual knowledge of the unlawful act or violation. So, we talked about that an hour ago or so, where if you get in trouble, does that mean they're going after your employing broker? Maybe, maybe not. I had an ex-student one time give me a call, and she was working with a Latino community. You know, they're a tight-knit group. And what happened is that she called me up and she said, I wrote my first contract today. I said, well, congratulations. And she said, well, I really didn't write it. I just had them sign at the bottom. I'm going to fill it in later. I went, really? You know? I said, and then about a month later, she calls me up and tells me the same story, and then says that this particular guy gave her $1,000 cash and didn't even ask for a receipt. I went, wow. What's to keep the guy coming tomorrow and saying that he gave her $5,000 or $10,000? I guarantee you, her broker did not know she was doing this. So if they went after her for doing, they're not going to get her employing broker. So again, she's going to be on her own if that should happen. Look on page 126, very last paragraph. When are we entitled to a commission? Let's read this. No real estate agent or broker is entitled to a commission for finding a purchaser who is ready, willing, and able to complete a purchase of a real estate as proposed by the owner until the same is consummated or is defeated by the refusal or neglect of the owner to consummate the same as agreed upon. So when are we entitled to a commission? When we write a contract? No. When we produce what we're going to talk about, a ready, willing, and able purchaser. Someone who puts a contract on a property is ready and willing, but there's going to be all types of conditions, all types of contingencies in that contract. And until those contingencies or contracts are contingencies are taken care of, we don't have a contract. It has to be a ready, willing, and able purchaser. Maybe he's not able to get a loan. Well, he's not ready, willing, and able, is he? He's ready and willing, but he's not able. Top of the next page. Objections on account of title. There's all these conditions. If the title doesn't come back where it's marketable, we'll be talking about that. No real estate agent or broker is entitled to a commission when a proposed purchaser fails or refuses to complete his contract of purchase because of defects in the title of the owner, unless such owner within a reasonable time has said defects corrected by legal proceedings or otherwise. They can get out of the contract for anything having to do with the title if it's not marketable. In Colorado, it's up to the seller to make sure that property is marketable. In other words, that he sells it to this person is able to resell it. If you buy a property that you can't resell, what's that property worth? Nothing. We spend a lot of time on title in this class.
So that's why we kind of order a title inspection?
That's why we order a title search, and we check right on the contract who orders it. Typically the seller orders it. Whoever orders it pays for it. When we get into closings, we talk about title in great detail, and we talk about it every session also. When must the owner perfect title? The owner shall not, second paragraph on 127, the owner shall not be required to begin legal or other proceedings for the correction of such title until such agent or broker secures from the proposed purchaser an enforceable contract in writing, binding him to complete the purchase whenever the defects in the title are corrected. When does the seller have to perfect the title? Not at the time of the listing, but at the time of the contract
Yeah, do not
is
start
when he has to perfect title.
till the deal's done.
Yeah, that's when he has to do it, not before then. Make sure that he does have good title to the property.
So you said it's time of contract, does that mean the closing? Yes.
At time of contract, when the contract is written,
Okay.
there's going to be a contingency for him to have so many days to make sure that title is perfected
Very
or is
clear.
marketable. Okay, then the next section here, 1, referral fees, etc. No licensee under parts 1 to 4 of this article shall pay a referral fee unless reasonable cause for payment of the referral fee exists. A reasonable cause for payment means an actual introduction of business has been made, a contractual referral fee relationship exists. Remember, I have the listing, you're bringing in the buyer, the co-op fee. A contractual cooperative brokerage relationship exists. And no person shall interfere with the brokerage relationship of a licensee as used in this subsection. Brokerage relationship means a relationship entered into between the broker and a buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, under which the broker engages in any of the acts set forth in this section. A brokerage relationship is not established until a written brokerage agreement is entered into between the parties or is otherwise established by law. We're going to get to that, what they're talking about here, in just a little bit. Interference with the brokerage relationship means demanding a referral fee from a licensee without reasonable cause. And referral fee means any fee paid by a licensee to any person or entity other than a cooperative commission offered by a listing broker to a selling broker, or vice versa. Listing broker, buyer's broker. We'll be talking about the differences here in just a little bit. Next paragraph. Any person aggrieved by a violation of any provision of this section may bring a civil action in a court of competent jurisdiction. The prevailing party in any such action shall be entitled to actual damages, and in addition, the court may award an amount up to 3 times the amount of actual damages sustained as a result of any such violation, plus reasonable attorney's fees. And again, I take this home off the market for some, for whatever reason. Let's say that I take the home off the market and I sell the property, and by taking it off the market, I mean I go ahead and put a contract on this property, and then I get the guy all the way through. It turns out for some reason the seller cannot produce title, or for some reason he is not going to pay me a commission. I can sue that guy to get my commission back. Will I sue that seller? Probably not. Do I want to get a reputation in the business that I sue my clients? It all depends. Your broker will help you with that too. Okay, let's skip over to page 1-33 and talk about this now. Brokerage relationships, second and third paragraph from the bottom down there. Let's talk about this scenario. In Colorado, we are not real estate agents. In Colorado, we're real estate brokers who may work as an agent. We'll talk about the difference here. I'm going to explain this way, and I'm going to explain it virtually word for word when we get to the law and practice portion also, because it works the same way. And it's confusing whether we're working as an agent for a client, a customer, whether we're working as a transaction broker. So let's look at this scenario here. I go and list these people's property. So I'm sitting at their kitchen table drawing up a listing contract to put their home on the market. And I say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I am going to be working with you as your agent. And what that means is this: I'm going to be representing you. I am going to put your needs ahead of my own. It's going to be a master-servant relationship. I'm going to obey you in every legal thing you command me to do, and I'm going to sell your home for the most I possibly can. Now, I am going to put your home in the multiple listing service, and probably a broker from another company will bring in the buyer. But there's a chance I'm going to bring in the buyer. I'm going to do everything I can to sell your home also. And if I'm bringing in this buyer, I may be representing that buyer as their agent, a buyer's agent. And I'm going to make them very similar promises: master-servant relationship, obey them in every legal thing they command me to do, and I'm gonna promise to find them a home for the least amount of money I can. So then I bring them into these people's house. Didn't I just promise them I'm gonna sell for the most I can? Didn't I promise this guy I'm gonna find him a home for the least I can? Total conflict of interest, isn't it? What that's called is dual agency. I'm working as an agent on both sides, and it's not allowed in Colorado. We cannot have dual agency in Colorado. So, Mr. Seller, what's going to happen is I will change one of you into a customer and keep the other one as an agent. Or I will transfer both of you to be a transaction broker where I'm not representing either one of you. And I'm assisting the two of you into getting into this home. So I can work as an agent for one side, a customer for the other side, an agent for this side, customer for the other side, or a transaction broker for both sides. I cannot be an agent, or agent transaction broker. Let's do this. Turn in your book to page 2-30. 2-30. 2-30. And look at E40, second paragraph. Keep your fingers where we just were. But flip over to 2-30. Look at the E40, second last paragraph. Double-ended brokerage relationship. A broker shall not enter into a brokerage relationship with one party as an agent and the other party as a transaction broker. A broker who works with both the buyer and the seller in the same real estate transaction may do so as a transaction broker for both the buyer and the seller, a single agent for the seller treating the buyer as a customer, a single agent for the buyer treating the seller as a customer. These options shall be disclosed and made part of the agreement between the parties to the listing contract, right to buy contract, or tenant contract, whichever is appropriate. So what I just said is very well explained in that one paragraph. Now, we are going to talk about it when we get to contracts, especially the listing contract. We merely just check a box as to how we're working with these people. We also have what's called the definition of working relationships that we use. Yeah.
I have a question because we ran into a question the other day. Is dual agent and dual agency the same thing?
The question is dual agent and dual agency the same thing? Yes. Where I'm working with an agent on both sides of the deal, and I can't do that. I want to be on both sides of the deal, don't I? When I list that property, I want to sell it too. And how can I do that? I can't be an agent on both sides. Something has to change.
So I'm sorry. So it's going to be a difference if there's a question related to that. The answer is going to vary depending if the question is in the state part, or if it's in the
General
part.
portion, very good. The question is, the concern is, in other states, dual agency is allowed. Not every state, but some states do allow dual agency. Now,
as
in
long as you have it
Colorado,
on writing by both parties.
pardon me?
As long as it's on writing, approval by both parties, right? In
In other states, the question is, you have to have approval in writing from both parties. Well, in Colorado, agency has to be in writing. In some states, agency doesn't have to be in writing. In some states, if I'm acting like your agent, I could be interpreted to be your agent. But not in Colorado. In Colorado, agency must be in writing. Agency must be in writing. And of course, it has to be approved by that client to be their agent. Now, there is something, let's say this happens. I take Liliana, I'm going to take her out and show her a house. I say, let's go find you a property. At that point, I'm her transaction broker. Transaction broker doesn't have to be declared. So I automatically her transaction broker at that point. What is she to me? She's my customer. She's not my client.
Or your principal.
She's not my principal. She's my customer. What am I to her? I'm her transaction broker. What do I owe to her? Fair and honest business dealings. What does she owe to me? Fair and honest business dealings. Now I put her under contract. I get a contract on her. What am I then? Wow, I'm still her transaction broker, but what is she to me now? She's my client. She's my principal. Our relationship changes drastically, doesn't it? I still owe her fair and honest business dealings, but now I've got contractual obligations also. Now, before I take her out and show her homes, I can become her buyer's agent, where no matter who sells her a home, I get paid, even if she finds one herself. And we'll talk about that in greater detail in just a minute. So, let's go over this a little bit here, guys. We've got, first of all, we can do what? We can work as an agent, or we can work as a transaction broker. And Colorado was the only state that has a customer thrown in there. Where if I'm working with an agent on one side, I have to work with the other side as a customer. Or I have to work with both sides as a transaction broker, if I have both sides of the deal. Now we've spent about 20 minutes, half an hour talking about this. So I walk into somebody's house, I sit down at their kitchen table, start talking about this. Do you think I go into agency and transaction broker? No way. I go into this in this depth. They're going to look at me and go, you know what? I don't know if we want to even list our house tonight. Let's think about it. All they want to do is sell their home. They don't care about all this stuff. I always work personally as a transaction broker when I work. I work as a transaction broker on the listing side and on the sales side. But whatever your broker wants you to do, he'll have his own opinions. And a lot of times, the company you go to work for will always make you work as an agent. I work as a transaction broker whenever I can. If I'm doing stuff for a family member or a close friend, then of course I work as an agent. I have to. I can't say I'm not representing my sister, I'm not representing my brother. Paisano Real Estate over on 37th and 39th and Federal. Some of you got to know about Paisano. Anyway, Angel Hernandez, the owner, I do training for their people over there. And we were going over this one time. And I said, yeah, I always work as a transaction broker, and you guys should too. He took me aside and he said, you know, he said, the people we work with are almost always the Latino population, and English is their second language. And many times we're interpreting that contract to them. And because of that, we have to work as an agent. How can we say we're not representing them when we're actually interpreting the contract for them? And I went, wow, you're right. And he's 100% correct. He has to work as an agent in that situation. So sometimes we have to work as an agent. But whenever we can, we really should work as a transaction broker. And when we get to the contract tomorrow morning, you'll see some other issues that come into play there also.
Is that just so you're less committed, or so to speak, so you're more flexible, that you'd rather be a transaction broker?
The main thing is we're going to find out tomorrow when we go over the listing contract that there's less liability in a transaction broker. We're going to find out tomorrow that there's really no difference between agency and transaction broker. The difference is in how the public perceives us.
Okay.
And if they think we're representing them, I believe we have a much higher liability issue than if we don't. And we'll look at that in the listing contract, and you'll see my reasoning on this. See if you agree or not. So, now, look on page 133, 1-33, and look at the bottom down there. It talks about definitions, right at the very bottom. It talks about a broker, it talks about a customer. And in the purest sense of the word, that's someone I don't have a contract with. But in Colorado, I could have a contract with the customer if I'm working on the other side as their agent. And then we have designated broker. So in Colorado, let's say that that I have Rocio, okay. And Daniel, and what's that? You need your name tag, not your Daniel. That's not for me, it's for everybody, okay? And what happens is Daniel goes out and gets a listing on this property, and his license is under mine. I say, great job, I'm going to designate you to be the broker for that seller. And he says, can I work with them as an agent? I'll say, your call. So he goes and works with them as an agent. Then Rocio goes over and brings in the buyer. And she says, I'm going to designate you to be the designated broker for the buyer. She says, can I work with them as an agent? And I say, sure you can. Well, now both their licenses are underneath mine, and they're both working as an agent on both sides of the deal. What I have done, I've designated them to be the brokers for those two people. In every other state, that's considered dual agency, but not in Colorado. In Colorado, it's not considered dual agency. There's a question coming at you. In Colorado, an employing broker who designates two licensees underneath him as agents in the same transaction has created for himself, and the answer is no agency. No agency at all in Colorado. In other states, that is considered dual agency. We'll talk about this again, guys. I know I'm hitting a lot of things here, and it gets kind of complicated, but it will come together. Let's go to page 1-34. Look at number 2 at the top of the page. We have dual agent. That's where you're working with as an agent on both sides of the deal. Not allowed in Colorado. It is allowed in other states. Then we have a limited agent, which means I'm just selling his house. I'm a limited agent. Or a single agent, where I'm just working on one side of the deal. I'm not a dual agent. I'm a single agent. I'm working as an agent on one side of a deal. Then we have something called sub-agent. And a sub-agent is where you're an agent for an agent. And it's not allowed in Colorado. Sub-agency is not allowed in Colorado either. Now, this is how it works. I list these people's home as an agent. Everybody in my office is considered to be a sub-agent to me in that deal. That's an example of a sub-agent. And like I say, we don't have sub-agency in Colorado. And then transaction broker in Colorado is the one who created transaction brokerage. And again, you're not an agent, you're not representing either party, you're assisting the two parties as a transaction broker. Let's read that. Number 6 here. Means a broker who assists one or more parties through a contemplated real estate transaction with communication, interposition, advisement, negotiation, contract terms, and the closing of such real estate transaction without being an agent or advocate. Advocate means helper. I'm not working as a helper to them. I am assisting them, but I'm not going any farther than assisting them. Or advocate for the interests of any party to such transaction. Upon agreement in writing pursuant to that state statute or written disclosure, a transaction broker may become a single agent. So again, I'm working as a transaction broker. Can I change my relationship to an agent later? I sure can. But I cannot be an agent on both sides of the deal. Let's do this. Let's go into your 3-ring binder, and let's go to your second section. In your big 3-ring binder, your second section, Colorado, the Colorado section there. You're right after that thick piece of paper there, that stock, hard stock, Colorado test questions and answers, and go to your first one, day 1, test prep Colorado day 1. Everybody there?
Mm-hmm.
Test prep Colorado day 1. Let's go over these. Now these are not tests, guys. This is study material. And all the answers are at the end of these questions. So you have all the answers to these. And we'll go over most of these in class, but even if we don't go over them all in class, you do have the answers here as you're studying and reviewing these. Let's do number 1. According to Colorado brokerage relationship law, all of the following are true except, we're looking for an exception. Which one is not true? A buyer agency must be in writing. That's true, right? An agency agreement with the seller must be in writing. That's true. All brokers will need to be sub-agents of the seller. There is no sub-agency in Colorado. So that's the answer, probably. Transaction broker relationships may be created without written contracts. Yes, they can. If we don't say how we're working with someone, the default provision is transaction broker. We're automatically a transaction broker if we don't declare how we're working. So C is the answer. Now, if you have a contract and you want to hide something in that contract, don't put it in little print at the bottom. Everybody reads that. If you want to hide something in a contract, put it in big bold print right in the middle of the contract. And what happens, people get down to that bold print and they go, well, they're not hiding anything here, and they tend to just kind of skip right over it. You'll do the same thing with these excepts and nots. So read them like that. According to Colorado Brokerage Relationship Law, all the following are true except the E word. We're looking for exception. Which of the following is not true? We're looking for one that's not true. So make sure you read it like that so you get that in your mind. Number 2, a broker who represents a seller in selling an option in real estate. If you're selling options in real estate, it's required a real estate broker's license. A. Number 2, all Colorado real estate licenses expire on, and the answer is D-Dog, every 3 years on your initial anniversary date. It used to be on December 31st every 3 years, but they changed it. In the manual, it still says December 31st. But it's not. It's every 3 years on your anniversary date. A broker may substitute the 24-hour mandatory continuing education requirements by, you can take the 24 hours of continuing ed, or D-Dog successfully passing the Colorado portion of the state exam.
Over again?
What's
So
that?
You can take it over again?
The state, just the state part, not all
All
of
you
it.
have to do is take just the Colorado portion if you want to. If you pass that Colorado portion, you don't need your continuing ed.
So every 3 years, you just take the test over again?
Take the Colorado portion and that's all you need. Yeah. How much of that Colorado portion do you think you're going to remember 3 years from now?
Yeah.
It'd be much easier to take that 8 hours a year.
Oh yeah. I have at least one student, maybe more, every 3 years. They call me up about in June. You know, their license expires about 3 months from there. She says, send me the questions, send me the new stuff so I can go take Colorado exam. And I do. She goes down and passes it every 3 years. So. Number 5, an agreement to amend and extend a sales contract can be used to, this is where we change something in a listing agreement, and it's or in a sales contract, not in a listing contract. In a sales contract, we'd have an amend, extend. Amendments change things, or we extend a date. We'd use it to change a closing date. Would be an example. C. Number 6, an employing broker is required to do which of the following for a newly qualified broker? Are they required to provide a mentor? No, they can do it themselves. Sign all contracts prepared by the broker? No, don't have to do that. Attend all closings? There's not a requirement for them to attend closings, guys. You better ask your broker when you go to work for them, you going to be at the closings with me? If their answer is anything but yes, don't go to work for them. Now their mentor, they'll assign you a mentor, maybe he'll be at the closings. And the answer is D-Dog, to provide an appropriate level of supervision. Number 7, all the following are regulated by license law except ethics. Ethics, D-Dog. Number 8, Colorado licensing law requires errors and omissions insurance for legal entities as follows. This is how this works. If I have someone working for me, I need errors and omissions, the person working for me needs errors and omissions, and my company needs errors and omissions also. So the answer to this one is C. The corporation or limited liability company broker and the broker applying for the license. All of those need to have errors and omissions insurance. So I need 3 policies if I have one person working for me. Number 9, if you are an associate broker, you must be at least 18. The buyer or seller cannot be required to pay the title company. Now, okay, let's talk about this. The answer is fees for legal document preparation. The key word there is preparation. You have to be licensed to prepare documents. And title people are not licensed. So they cannot charge a fee for preparing documents. What do? We say that, yeah, the title company's preparing our documents. They're really not, okay? We say that but they're not preparing our documents. They cannot receive a fee for preparing our documents. It's just really a confusing thing here. Again, they cannot charge a fee for legal document preparation, a title company have. We're going to find out, we're going to read about the word scrivener, where they're acting as a scrivener, an assistant, a helper to us. We'll talk about that later on. Number 11, so the answer is A on number 10. All real estate licenses due for renewal expire T-Dog, 3 years from initial licensing date. An employing broker can delegate his supervisory function to,
B.
remember I told you at least 2 years experience? Someone with 11 years experience, there it is. That's how it is on the state exam, just like that. So I gave you a freebie there. Okay, let's go back into our real estate manual. And that is the end of lesson 1 for those of you on the DVD.